Few topics are as emotionally charged, morally complex, and universally sensitive as the question of suicide. Is it ever a moral right? Does autonomy extend to the choice to end one's life? Or are there ethical, societal, and spiritual obligations that constrain such a decision? Today, we'll explore these questions through the lens of philosophy, considering arguments from thinkers like Kant, Mill, Camus, and more. This isn't about finding a definitive answer. It's about understanding the perspectives that shape this age-old debate. The way societies view suicide has evolved over millennia. Ancient Greece. For the Stoics, suicide could be a rational choice under specific conditions. Thinkers like Seneca argued that if life became unbearable due to pain or dishonor, ending one's life could be an act of dignity and reason. Medieval Europe. In contrast, Christianity deemed suicide a mortal sin, rooted in the belief that life is a gift from God and not ours to take. St. Augustine condemned it as an affront to divine authority, a perspective that dominated Western thought for centuries. The Enlightenment. Philosophers like David Hume challenged these religious taboos. In his essay On Suicide, Hume argued that life belongs to the individual, not to God or society, and that ending one's life could be morally neutral or even justified under certain circumstances. These historical shifts show how deeply cultural and philosophical frameworks shape our moral intuitions about suicide. At the heart of the debate lies a tension between autonomy, the right to make decisions about one's own body and life, and moral or societal obligations. Autonomy as a fundamental right. John Stuart Mill, a proponent of individual liberty, argued that people should be free to act as they wish, provided they don't harm others. Applied to suicide, this view supports the idea that the decision belongs solely to the individual. But what about cases where one's death deeply affects loved ones or society? Does autonomy include the right to cause indirect harm? Kant's moral duty. Immanuel Kant took a stricter stance. He believed suicide violated a universal moral law. For Kant, taking one's life treats oneself as a means to an end, rather than an end in itself, which contradicts his principle of human dignity. These opposing views highlight a critical ethical question. Does our moral duty to others override our autonomy? Existentialists like Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre approach the question of suicide through the lens of meaning and absurdity. Albert Camus, The Myth of Sisyphus. Camus called suicide the one truly serious philosophical problem. In a world devoid of inherent meaning, why continue living? Camus' answer was defiance. By embracing life's absurdity and creating one's own meaning, we affirm our existence. To Camus, choosing life is an act of rebellion against meaninglessness. Jean-Paul Sartre, Freedom and Responsibility. For Sartre, life's lack of predetermined purpose places the burden of meaning squarely on the individual. Suicide, in this context, is a choice, but it also represents a refusal to confront the freedom and responsibility of shaping one's existence. The existentialist view doesn't condemn suicide, but challenges us to grapple with the human condition before making such a profound decision. While philosophy offers theoretical insights, the reality of suicide is deeply tied to mental health and social circumstances. Mental health. Studies show that most suicides occur in the context of untreated depression, anxiety, or trauma. This raises the question, can a person in such a state exercise true autonomy? Social inequality. High suicide rates often correlate with poverty, systemic injustice, or lack of social support. Philosopher Martha Nussbaum argues that a society's ethical duty includes creating conditions where individuals can thrive. By this logic, reducing suicide involves addressing systemic issues as much as individual choice. This perspective reframes suicide not solely as a personal decision, but as a reflection of broader societal challenges. The debate becomes even more complex when we consider assisted suicide or euthanasia. Support for assisted suicide. Philosopher Peter Singer argues that in cases of terminal illness, where suffering is unbearable and death is inevitable, assisted suicide respects both autonomy and compassion. Concerns against it. Critics warn about potential abuses. Could societal pressure or resource scarcity lead to vulnerable individuals feeling obligated to choose death? This ethical gray area underscores the importance of safeguards and thoughtful policies when addressing the right to die. Perhaps the biggest challenge in this debate is the tendency to frame it in absolutes. Suicide is either morally right or wrong. Philosophy teaches us to embrace complexity. Instead of asking, "Is suicide ever justified?" we might ask, under what conditions does suicide reflect autonomy? And under what conditions does it reflect despair? By reframing the question, we open space for empathy, understanding, and nuanced solutions. Is suicide a moral right? The answer, like most philosophical questions, depends on the lens through which we view it. Philosophy doesn't offer easy answers, but it does help us ask better questions, challenge assumptions, and approach difficult topics with compassion and clarity. If this resonated with you, like this video, subscribe, and let's keep exploring life's most profound questions together. Remember, philosophy isn't just about answers, it's about the journey of understanding.